It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Vijay Shekhar Sharma. I don't need to introduce him, you all know it. But there's something called Paytm, which every of the 1.4 billion individuals of India have on their phone. You go to a small rickshaw, three-cycle. Vijay, give me a second. The mic is with you, and I know you're very anxious to get onto it, but give me a minute to tell them more about it. Every three-wheeler rickshaw to a small little vendor on the street will no longer take currency notes from you. They want that digital payment to be done. And this man single-handedly took that journey right through and has created that as a movement which is now moving beyond India. And with him, we have someone who's an icon by himself. The White House has just appointed him as the head of the Quad Investment Secretariat for the US. As you all know, Quad has us, Australia, and you're a part of it.
Japan.
And Japan with us. Yeah. And he's now working out how he's going to join the dots to get investments within these 4 countries moving together to strengthen their bridges. And if you want to know why is it that he was chosen to head that entire effort from the side of the US, is because if you go and see, Carl is not just an author. He's not just a serial entrepreneur, but he's a man who has had multiple hats, created multiple successful businesses, and then took them to the world, which have changed it. So from now on, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be the 2 icons with themselves in conversation. I'm out of the picture because I have nothing to do. I don't feature in this amazing company. Carl, Vijay, for the 2 of you.
Thank you. Very kind of you to give this.
Thank you, Deepak.
I've never heard so many superlatives in one go for us. So thank you. There was.
Don't believe everything that Deepak said. Deepak is very kind, very generous. So don't believe him.
I think everything that happens in Indian belief, and I think the rest of the world, all of us believe that it's a timing. It's a time, the correct time. When an opportune time comes up, it happens. So the contribution that I can only take away for myself would be that I was standing there when this time was passing by. That's it. And rest, I can say, it is really magical to talk about what India has built. So welcome and good to see you here, Carl, old friend. As a very interesting anecdote to most of you in this room, when I was starting Paytm and my board was not convinced that as a B2B technology company that we should become a B2C technology company, Carl actually told me $25 million underwritten from my side if your board doesn't agree to build Paytm. So thank you so much for the faith you had much before anybody else had. Even my board, before my investors and my board members had. So I go back to Carl as that fond friend, mentor, look up to him and the kind of things you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I mean, Vijay is a very inspiring entrepreneur, and the fact that he tells his story, it's very fresh in my mind. Almost, it's 12 years back. I was at the Delhi airport, and he is such a tenacious entrepreneur. Obviously, he was very successful with 197. But I had a flight to catch, and I was early, which is kind of rare. I had 2 hours. So he calls me, and he says that, okay, you got 2 hours. That's plenty of time. I'll come to the airport, and we'll do the meeting. And then he actually took me in his car to his office just for 20 minutes. And this is what happened, what he just said. So that's an amazing story. I know all entrepreneurs have some great stories. So let's dive into the topic today, which is the future of fintech. There's no better person than Vijay. As Deepak mentioned, he single-handedly created the most iconic company, not just in India. I mean, the technology and the platform and the scale and everything that he has built is very much applicable to other parts of the world. He's also been very successful in Japan. So maybe I'll start off with you, Vijay, and then I'll add my thoughts about it. But tell us like the big picture of fintech. Where is it heading? What are you seeing as opportunity? And what are the short-term hurdles? Because obviously there has been a tectonic shift in the fintech space as a category. I'll just give you guys a little bit numbers from a venture capital hat. Fintech was a darling of the VCs, as you know, in 2021. 1 out of every 4 investments in startups went into fintech. So 25% of the venture capital dollars went into fintech as a category. Last quarter numbers are out for Q4 2022. it's fallen off the cliff to now less than 14% of the venture capital dollars. Obviously, the macroeconomic headwinds that we've seen with high inflation, high interest rates, very tight, compressed credit environment, low savings rate, unemployment spiking up, all of that has probably more impact on the fintech as a category than other categories that the VCs invest in. But I think India has been a different story compared to all these global numbers. India has been holding up. The public markets in India has not taken the beating that we have seen in the Western democracies, including the startup ecosystem is thriving. So we'll have the best view on the world as well as the view on India from Vijay. So,
All right.
yeah.
Thank you. So let me put the existential question that why there is a need of a fintech, if you will, because the institutions which are traditionally regulatedly been there, banking, non-banking entities and payment networks, etc. Why was there need of fintech and why we would put it up? So there is an avalanche of technology introduction to the financial system, and this most of financial system technology goes in there, bells and whistles which are internal to them. For example, like let's say an application to the credit would go through a paperwork. Instead of that, it'll go through a system which is technology or cloud-led system. Some of the decisions that earlier they would have made using a human sitting in front of putting up in the computer or Excel sheet, they would have now moved to a AI-led or cloud-led system. But it misses one of the biggest opportunity for financial system to expand towards the people who are underserved or unserved, which is where the inclusion obligation of us comes up, is that the distribution of financial services through the technology. So Carl, the idea here is that typically, let's say we are in Davos, and if we have to serve the people of Davos, UBS has to open, or Credit Suisse has to open a branch here. Because you will walk in, take the bank
and there are still some branches here on the street here,
actually see.
right, which is quite surprising that we still need the physical brick and mortar bank branches right here on Promenade. But
I think Swiss will be the last country, in my opinion, in food chain because of the aging and the comfort that people drive with the brand. So now, this is an investment from the institution towards outreach. Now look at the other way around. If a customer says, I'm ready to invest on a computing device, which could morph into the financial services app that you want it to be, and I'm ready to invest in a network connection, which means I can connect to your network. So how about a investment from consumer side that is I'm ready to take the financial services towards my side. Now that magic is the reason that fintech is about the company that delivers financial services using app versus the technology that financial services companies use, which is a business model for Wipro, Infosys that we are sitting here with and so on. Now that second part is something which is where we also have the challenge of the fintech because these companies who have an outreach or reach of dramatic large hundreds of million consumers level traditionally been big tech. The Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons of the world, and then local champions like, let's say, Paytm could have been in India. Now, this creates an opportunity for every company to create financial services that can be served using an app. It also creates an opportunity for big tech to walk in, and that sort of is, in my opinion, the current friction or the stress point in a financial system. Is big tech good for financial system because it gives an outreach, or is big tech a challenger to the financial system because it disintermediate relationship? And I think this is the contemporary topic in fintech. When you look at this investment agenda, this is where the current stall or pause or slowly investments have gone into. Beyond the macro of the country's economy, pricing, risk capital availability, thanks to QE and also that happen, if we discount like, let's say by 20-30% of that, the discount is by right now 50+%. So now where is the balance coming from? This decision itself. Because all over the world, central banks have decided that I think I wanted technology to solve the financial inclusion problem, but I did not want a non-technology dude to take over that financial system. Now that is exactly the moment of truth that I think is the fintech. The reason that we call them fintech and not techfin is that they're calling themselves that I'm a tech company which is in financial space. Now you remember that Uber crossed transportation, Amazon crossed retail, can the fintech cross the financial services? Without regulation, it becomes a tricky thing. I mean, one of the biggest regulated, unregulated story that we know in the world which created a fiasco is #crypto, and from FTX to everything else, you can look at it. So this is the contemporary pain of a fintech ecosystem. should you be regulated fin enabling tech as a distribution,
Right.
or should you be a tech company enabling or building financial services which are disintermediating a current financial system? And that's also the opportunity, I believe, is the reason this is the most vibrant technology system right now.
Right.
It can go through deep tech width because you have a decision of underwriting to the risk, and it can go to the consumer because it has the most fabulous consumer interaction every day possible that money has with people.
Well, that's a great explanation. By the way, this is something that not Vijay is saying after having built one of the world's largest and the best company in fintech. These are his far-reaching thoughts even 12 years back when I met him. Okay, so he sees things that most people didn't see it. And I'll confess myself, so back in 2010, 2011, I had sold my payment and fintech company to Visa, and I was at Visa in their executive suite. And we had never imagined or never thought at Visa, and we used to see every transaction and every payment innovation in the world. And we never had that worldview that India would be able to rise this fast or become such a large opportunity. And today, in just less than 10 years or 12 years, India has more electronic payments, more technological capability, more real-time payment systems than the United States.
Yeah.
So how did that magic happen, right? Just in 10 years, nobody in the world believed it. The smartest people in the financial services space who were dominating in the world with a brand name like Visa that everybody knows, and even we couldn't get it.
Yeah, so Carl, I believe that this is a India statement, and I'm sitting in the India Pavilion, and I belong to that cartel club land of which actually can tell that what is happening in a macro shift. Let's see it.
Yes.
So before mobile internet age,
Yeah.
the technology was primarily created in the Western world.
Yeah.
So if you notice, the US created IBMs of the world in the pre-desktop age or desktop age, and Europe created SAP.
Yeah.
Now, then you grow towards desktop internet age. You know the Googles and the Facebook, everything, because the desktop internet was clouded, computed, computing was created. Now, that point onward, the technology started to become reach far more because mainframe became desktop PC. But when came the smartphone, the power of a smartphone, you can only underestimate power of a smartphone in common person's hand. Yeah. This is a hashtag Shahrukh Khan's dialogue in the movie. Well, that power of smartphone created an opportunity of local markets in emerging countries for the first time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the elite or the top cohort of even emerging market cohorts were equally and well served by the technologies that were created in the western part of the world. Yeah. And this is what happened in the last 10 years. Thanks to the government and regulatory environment that India had, yeah. Indian entrepreneurs who have been known to be the champions of technology creation, and many examples out there, for the first time were creating solutions that were for their own country. Yeah. And I believe that digitization of financial services payment system success is a landmark success that can prove that we in India can build the technology that not only serves India, can serve the emerging and frontier world. Right. So the India's fintech success or India's payment or digitization success has a very long-term ramification in technology landscape. Earlier, when we saw the, let's say, Western world to be countered by China for the technology, but it was extremely locked in, or I would say proprietary, belonging to a Chinese system sort of technology. When world looked at alternate of US, they looked at China, but the truth of matter is the alternate to the Western world of technology is India, and I'm sitting here as the best statement to make that India is the place where we will see the emerging and frontier techs that will solve the problems for next 5 billion in the world.
Wow, fabulous. That's a round of applause for that. So maybe a follow-on question. So Vijay, absolutely, you built a technology that was for the 1.4 billion people, and I remember John Chambers used to say all the time when he was the CEO for Cisco that if you can succeed in India, you can succeed in any part of the world. That was his famous statement he would give to his head of engineering, and he would say that when you build the product, first launch the product in India, test the product in India. If it works there for specifications and pricing and value delivered to the customer, you'll be successful everywhere. Now, Vijay has already proven that. He made it successful in India, but not many people know that you have now, Paytm works in Japan, which is a developed nation and had a very strong, matured capability with JCB and all that stuff. So tell us a little bit about how this Indian technology finds its great success in Japan.
Well, Japan was totally something that we never expected, that we will be able to take India built technology that is off led by QR codes, and hashtag QR codes were invented in Japan by Denso, should you know that. So you will go to the country where it was originated to teach them how to use it. That was like when Masa, who's my shareholder, 20%, one-fifth of shareholder, said, oh, here is an opportunity, we want to build a QR payment system, and I don't want his friend Jack Ma, who, as you know, the cross-holding to each other.
Yeah.
So I do not want the Chinese or option of Jack Ma's technology. Would you be able to build it?
Yeah.
And I said, Masa, would you take a chance on us? He said that, look, I know that you have built something good in India. I do think that you could build something in Japan. So that was an opportunity which an entrepreneur wants to get.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, in this room, that we created this Japanese payment system exactly, absolutely like what Paytm is. There is a QR code. There is a app which is called PayPay, because we did not grant the license of using Paytm license for perpetuity for zero price. Masa pays 3% to Yahoo still, just in case, just because he has a Yahoo brand name of gross revenue for Yahoo, which is very large money now. So we wanted to not give the brand name, so it is called PayPay. And now the PayPay product was fighting Japanese market for two reasons, from two challengers. One was, like you said, JCB, and then there were Line. Line is a messenger in Korea, which some of you know is like the most dominating. Like everybody uses Line, like in India we use WhatsApp. Line had mobile payment system, and the second was cash. The problem of Japan was that how do you switch from cash to mobile? And Carl, I want to tell you, Masa also asked me, and he said, you know, VJ, Prime Minister Modi gave you an opportunity to create Paytm, but in Japan, I do not get it. Will you build it? I said, Masa, let me tell you, we are blessed to have a learning and opportunity which we built in India. I see no reason whatsoever that we will not be able to build it. And I want to tell all of you in this room, Japan is 135 million people, okay? And more than majority of those are 70-year-old, which means that your target audience that would use and download an app is actually half of that. You know what? We have a 50 million MAU.
Wow.
In a country of 135 million people, where the use case of the app is now, and by the way, I get to meet, negotiate funding, because we are the equity owner of that entity also. And Carl, the good thing that we did in this country, and I want all of you to know, that country does not have 24-hour ATMs. And I meant to meet different bank chairmen, and I was like, why would you not have 24-hour ATMs? So that people walk into the branch.
Wow.
Japan ATM shut at 11 p.m. 7-Eleven ATMs are 11 p.m. And in Japan, so that you know this, the currency note circulation is so high, dramatically high, and that was my biggest hurdle. And I being an Indian, how do I ask Japanese people what the insight is? So I went through this Ginza and all those areas which we would be living around and roaming around. And I learned one thing, and this is what I think that India has told to the world, which is called real time. So in Japan, when you swipe a card, the shop gets a payment in 4 weeks. It's not T+2, it's T+4 weeks. Which makes that, so everybody will first of all be extremely...
Even in the US, it's like,
it's
very hard to get even a weekly settlement.
I cannot tell you that what we built in India is not absolute benchmark for the world only for the consumption, but also for the financial system efficiency.
Right. Absolutely.
Internal efficiency. The ACH or the Visa Master Rail or any other network rails are structured for delayed payment. And it is because the system has been built like that, not because that they have a wrong intent.
Mainframe-based. Visa is still mainframe.
It is because of that. What India is like a mobile age technology, and then we can do real time. So when I wrote on a whiteboard that so this is what we do in India, that merchant setup, instant merchant setup, zero price MDR, and next day settlement. Oh, they don't, Japanese people don't say bad things immediately. They just say, oh, this is not going to happen. not going to happen. And I was like, why won't it happen? Because no money with us. The money comes in 4 weeks. So this is where I asked the arbitration of Masa. I said, Masa, I cannot do this if it is not next day. So the success of PayPay, which is led by what we have learned in India, is about what I believe that I think we were meeting here in Twins in Swiss also. I think the idea is that India has shown the world how financial systems should be modernized. Exactly. It's not just the payment, how financial systems should be modernized, how the bank should be pursued. I met Mijo Bank chairman and I said, would you do the next day settlement? And he who was working through a translator, he changed and body language became like this. I was taking away something. I said, okay, I know you're not doing it. Arigato gozaimasu. Arigato gozaimasu. We are good with it. Yeah. So Carl, I want to tell you, the opportunity for India is what we built the technology will be exported to the world.
Absolutely.
I met MBS in one of those meetings for Saudi. He wanted that build a Paytm-like system in Saudi. In my opinion, and I call upon all Fintech founders, What we are doing in India
Yeah.
is not IT service, is not discovery of just a new financial system. We are discovering the new way of financial system serving the citizens of different countries where the financial systems have not been able to serve the need of those country citizens. And that would be one of the big export to the country, from the country to the world. My dream is, as they say, that you took the defense aircrafts or you took the nuclear technology from that country, India proudly can say you took the financial system technology made in India.
Right.
I think that will be the day for us to say that we built in India and we built so well in India.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough personally because I had a very similar experience with Masa. So Masa was a big investor in my company, in payment company. Before I signed the dotted lines to sell to Visa, he told me not to sell. We had a joint venture with SoftBank in Japan. He wanted to disrupt the Visa MasterCard in Japan, so he wanted PlaySpan, which was doing similar real-time transactions using tokenization and virtual currencies. He wanted to bring it in Japan. I couldn't do it, but you did it, so thank you for that.
Thank you. I think everything has a time.
Yes.
Kala, I want to tell you that one thing that as an entrepreneur because we are talking investors and entrepreneurs in this room, the best of the idea is incredible only if it is at the correct time.
Correct timing, yep.
The timing pre or post is one of the biggest factor, and we may not factor in luck as a factor in our success. Many times people believe, aham brahmasmi, मैं ही हूँ जो ब्रह्म हूँ, मैं जो करता हूँ वही होता है. I mean, this is for the people who are not in this room understanding English. It is that I am God, I am the one who creates. Now that thought process has a factor of, I'm blessed by the blessings of the God and opportunity that God will give me, the universe will give me. So I think that is what India is. In last 10 years, what has India has seen is dramatic. It's not possible for any country in 10 years to achieve what we as India has achieved. I salute our government, I salute our regulators, I salute our ecosystem partners, NPCI out there, on the other players in the industry, everybody came together. You know, another factor that, Carl, I mean, there is an anti-incumbency to competition commission or various other issues in the other part of the world. India is a vibrant most country for the technology and the use of it.
Absolutely. So we have many entrepreneurs in the audience. So let's talk about the stack and where the opportunity is. The fintech is a big stack. I always, when people ask me, entrepreneurs ask me, where do we, build companies in fintech? I always refer them to this very famous graphic somebody had created about. They took the screenshot of the front page of Craigslist, and there is like 50 of the biggest companies came out of various categories on the Craigslist front page that you can see. So same thing in fintech, like, before fintech happened, most of the services were all bundled, aggregated by banks. So if you take the entire stack of the banks and everything that the banks provide, from savings to borrowing / lending to, any kind of insurance tech, insurance, all of that services, which are the parts of the fintech that you see as the next big opportunity? You already built the fundamental infrastructure of payments and many other things. You're almost becoming like a super app, right? Today, Paytm is like, I use it every time when I'm in India. I would love to use it in US, and we would want you to be very successful. But you already have a number of different services. So tell us where the big opportunities are besides the amazing empowerment that you've done to the merchants.
Okay, so as a technology entrepreneur, the first thing that you have to figure out is which is the largest TAM, total addressable market, and underserved market, and the large incumbent would not like to serve it for some reason or other, or either it cannot be served by their method, is now my return process. So while the most money in the world in financial system is made in the credit, underwriting, insurance underwriting, credit underwriting, these are the two places where the most amount of margin is made, profit pool is. But access to the customer of these services, access of very basic services is where the typical investments and the needs are not served so well. Not because they are costly, but because the IRR are not so great. So I would say those are the primary opportunities. So whether it is the payment stack, which in India has sort of reached a maturity stage of early days. In other words, the solution is sorted out. Now it will go to catapult to the next level. And now we talk about access to credit. In my opinion, India's fintech revolution's success will be defined when a roadside vendor can get that credit which was not possible for that person to get it. I mean, one of the things that I met erstwhile your place Visa's chairman and CEO here on Davos, and one of the questions that he was asking was, so UPI is free, why do you guys put so much of effort behind it? I said, first of all, it is not free, it is government subventions. So subventioning is a language which is in financial world that if you and I are in a transaction, you have to pay me a fee instead of you paying, someone else is paying. So it's called subvention, right? Subvention. And I'm sure most of you know there is a free EMI, 0% EMI, where the brand pays the cost of capital so that you can take a monthly check of payments. Now, when I said that no, UPI is not free. It is government is subventioning money. So he said, how much can they give? And this year, I'm very happy to tell you all that government has assigned 325 million US dollar. He actually said, $325 million? I said, this is for 9 months they've announced. And so that's a big number. So I said, now look at this. And this is what the fintech opportunity also culminates into. That once you have been able to get this small shopkeeper, who till now various government and regulatory initiatives have been that we get a heartbeat of this person on our financial system, on our country's economic system. This person has not registered for tax. This person does not do compliance or not have an obligation and cost of compliance, etc., to a level that we don't know there is somebody in the country that is there.
Yeah.
I mean, I very fondly say that the problem of India or the opportunity of India is that it is a rounding error to miss 50, 100 million people. Because we just found out, oh, we are 1.4 billion people. Wow, I thought we were 3 billion by now. So imagine whole Europe, come over here. That can happen. Now, exactly in the same way, if we have to serve that last mile small shop, the person who's on a street, the person whose economic benefit will bring the benefit to the country's economy in long term. Now, access to the growth has to reach there. And to reach there is no heartbeat that we even find out. And this is why the payment was my favorite way to do it. I said, if we can solve for payment, this QR code, which is on that shop, brings this person onto the network that I can make reach any benefit whatsoever or any support whatsoever. And government announced a Sonidhi credit program, and we as a company work with many, many lenders, Sonidhi or non-Sonidhi, different kind of credit. In my opinion, the success of fintech or payment revolution in India is going to be seen, and it is morphing into the success of disbursing credit from large financial institutions who do not have access to these people and the ability to disburse and collect. Remember, issuing a loan, why banks don't issue a loan of less than 5 lakh rupees or the small loan of 50,000 rupees? Because banks have a fixed cost. I process a loan for 5,000 rupees. Now, 5,000 on a 50,000 rupees is so high that this loan will become too usurious cost and whatnot. So they just don't serve that guy. While the technology-led, payment-led system can serve the problem in a 0.5% or less than 1% because we are already interacting with this person. His everyday money is coming. I can take the money every day he gets and serve the bank. Now, this kind of model, Carl, offer an opportunity again for the emerging and frontier markets because financial system has served the rich. If financial system has to serve the people who are not on the yet the financial service network or the growth of the economies is dependent on those people, it has to be starting from a relationship which is the most intimate financial relationship called payments. And in my opinion, payment as a foundation, credit as an opportunity, not just for Paytm, but for as many fintechs that can solve the problem, will be one of the biggest opportunities in the world.
Guys, Vijay's passion for the last mile and for the last person to get financial services and empowering that.
Okay, but I was one of those.
That inspired me to write this book about financial inclusion at the bottom of the pyramid. So everything that Vijay's talked about, we've written about the innovations and how do we bring the credit in the real time to the last person, to the lowest income people.
Actually, it says how global technology innovation will create a fully banked world. And I want to tell you guys that why Switzerland is rich. Think about it. Because it has the best banking system in the world, and nearly everybody has access to it. Do you know the richness of your life is dependent on the amount of financial banking access that you have?
Absolutely.
The richest most has access to something called synthetic dash. I was in Davos and somebody said, you can solve it by giving a synthetic instrument like this. I said, synthetic instrument? It is not this, not that, that is why synthetic. Now, I feel privileged that I have access to and have a conversation of this kind of conversation. So the only difference in the food chain of rich being richer and poor not even getting on the crossing the hump is because they don't even get a financial system access.
Access to financial
When
services.
financial system access, which Carl is talking here, reaches that person,
you can lift the entire economy.
I think the economy's wheel will move so dramatically bigger that we underestimate. I mean, remember this Unilever sachet theory, that the sachet is not valuable, but look at the size of economy and the size of business they created.
Yeah.
The sachet loan, the sachet payment, the sachet financial services, the service that can reach those guys will be dramatic large for financial ecosystem and economy.
Yeah.
And Carl, I so happily want to tell you that I fundamentally believe in this theory that technology will democratize access of financial system in this country and in the world.
So let's take the other side of the view of the ecosystem. So companies like yours, you've done amazing innovation, amazing growth, amazing empowering to the masses. Why aren't the banks that has all the infrastructure, all the capability? And we argued in this book, one of the success blueprint that we gave to the banks in this book is, guys, you guys have to completely shift your technology stack and business model from being a bank to being a bank as a service, like SaaS. You have to become BaaS, and we wrote a whole chapter on it, but it has not happened.
Why is it not?
Well, so there's a long story about the U.S. It's very complex and regulated, all that kind of stuff. But let's talk about India, since you're very much thick into that. What are the banks, the large banks in India? Are they responding to this? Are they doing something?
Success of payment system is success of banks. Straightforward. Everybody in between, the fintech or the payment app, are marketeer of that product. Because ultimately the transaction is happening at a bank. So let me just say this, that it is grossly underestimated the contribution of a financial system where the formal bank system is in the payment system. The credit goes to some other people like us, but the truest the
still on the back end of the underlining. But when
it's
actually UPI, why do you?
It's a bank system.
It's a bank system. It's a
bank-to-bank transaction system. Somebody in between is just an app of marketing it and getting a customer to drive it. We are the usability and marketing expert, not the bank system. Now the question of the why bank don't do it.
But let's just 1 minute on that. So now we've moved. You've seen the shift to neo banks, or you also have other interventions or mechanisms.
I think these neo banks are very neo metrics level of bank, when these are hypothetical banks, in my opinion, because they are not banks. That's why there is a prefix called neo bank. Well, one question that why banks don't do it is a very simple answer, is a very logical business answer.
Right.
If you are a bank that makes 1 lakh crore of revenue in a year, which is pretty large, as you can guess, I'm talking about 8,000 is $1 billion, so $10+ billion of revenue company, and your CAGR across 18 years is 26%.
Right.
Now you have to help me understand, why do I disrupt, challenge, create a problem in my ecosystem to do it? Success comes from homogeneity of business operations that you do.
Correct. Absolutely.
This is non-homogeneous to the core of serving. The problem is not that financial system in the India has not been able to solve the problem of inclusion. The problem is that India is such a large economy that we need many different cohort of people to solve different cohort of the problem. If you are a large bank, you're solving for industrialists, you're solving for big guys, you're solving for 5 lakh rupee check. There is no reason for you to try out 50,000 rupee check, because it is. While government burdens the banks, I want to call it the burdens, that, oh, why don't you do the small loans? I want to tell you that it is not their DNA and method. If you are used to speaking English and you want to make them speak different other language, it'll take time for them to learn, and they would not be fluent in that. In other words, if they are used to underwriting and solving problems, let's not build the diversity. Financial systems are homogeneous system. There is an expertise-led system. And in that system, they are delivering amazing growth over the tens of years. There is no commercial, logical method for the same people to solve the same problem. In my opinion, the opportunity, this 5,000 rupee loan is a small opportunity for a large bank. I mean, would you rather give a 1,000 crore loan, or 1,000 people 1 crore loan, or 10,000 people 1 lakh rupee loan? You can understand the math. It is extremely complex, because you can walk into one industry and then you can get a check done for 1,000 crores, and that is a better, efficient use of the resource. Well, in my opinion, the financial inclusion as a puzzle is like cohort of people. They need to be served like that. So that's why there is a private bank. There is a PSU bank. There is a private sector bank. And then there is a small finance bank. And then there is a NBFC and so on. All these cohorts create a new opportunity which does not risk, incidentally, the previous opportunity. And India's economy's growth is so dramatic. By the way, this is a rule of thumb in this room for everybody to understand which country to go for your opportunities. And it's the India that we will very simply understand why. The X percentage of economic growth requires 3X percentage of credit growth in the country. credit growth in the country will be driven by your financial systems that you are acknowledging, and the traditional systems can't even build up that kind of 3x growth. So if you want to talk about 6%, 8% growth, you're waiting for 25% credit growth. 25% credit growth is so extreme earnest on the current people that you will have to have new kind of people.
Yeah.
Now, new kind of people will find new kind of ways and sell source of capital because they are innovative and they have to get in the market, will make a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you now, finally, why go US and Japan, the negative growth countries in the world?
Well,
Where
US,
the big market, big will not let you come in.
Yeah.
In countries like India, where we all open, everybody with open heart and open arms, want to come and solve the problems for this country. If you solve problem for Indians, every wise man, including John Chambers, said that if you can solve for India, you can solve for the world.
Yep.
You solve for scale, you solve for pricing, you solve for efficiency, you solve for what problem the
Yep.
world will see.
Absolutely. So to summarize, like, my experience in fintech is that it's very counterintuitive than other industries. So if you look at other categories on the internet, most companies made a lot of money and became very successful by following one formula, which was aggregation, aggregation, aggregation. You look at travel, and there is a whole bunch of, from Expedia to whoever, they all aggregate various sites. If you look at whether portals like Yahoo that emerged with just aggregating content and news and all that. Fintech, exactly the opposite. The way you think is that you think about disaggregating, you think about uncoupling. So you look at every services that the bank provides, and you just layer it out and you decouple everything and say, I'm gonna just focus on this one thing and do it extremely well, and you become very successful. So anyways, no conversation on fintech will be complete without speaking and talking about crypto, right? It's
I was going to ask you this question, actually, now that we are talking. Tell me, as a quad economy,
Yes.
and I wanted to pick up the crypto as a thing.
Yeah.
Crypto is a statement of that I'm going to disintermediate the central government itself, the sovereign itself,
Yeah.
the currency itself.
Yeah.
So tell me why the crypto should be successful and why the bear case of crypto, what has happened in the case.
Right. Well, so I mean, we had made a case for crypto in this book 6-7 years ago when we wrote it, and I think it will take almost 10-15 years to get into the mainstream. I think the real value of crypto or any kind of this currencies in any one of these use cases is on very, very specific use case or certain communities, what everybody loves to call the Web3 communities. So there is a legitimate Web3 community use case where a certain group of people would decide that we want to own the ledger between just a group of us. Like, think about, our grandparents, like, my grandfather.
Carl, one question before that, you want to have a community on the ledger. Do you believe Wall Street, which is one of the largest market in the world, or probably absolutely the largest market for it is actually fairly operated because it is the market that decides, or it can also be gamed? As a macro, I'm sure you know what I'm trying to ask. Is there a philosophy called a crowd can decide what is good for the crowd?
It's both. I mean, there's no one single answer.
I mean, the classic theory of the blockchain-led, currency-led, crypto-led financial system is the decision is owned by the community that is the customer.
Yes.
Now, do you think the customer knows what they want?
Well, so I was giving this example, right? So if you look at 50, 70 years back, or even 100 years back, my grandfather migrated from Gujarat in 1910 to Bombay. And he started doing trading business in pharmacy, pharmacy products, and selling back to UK and all that. That was a British Raj. And he and other traders who came from Gujarat to Bombay, they had their own ledger system. They would give money to each other, but they would maintain a little diary. I remember, the grandparents, if you're lucky enough to have your grandparents still alive, you would always remember them with a pen and a diary. And in that diary, the entire credit debit is written just like the banking ledger system.
Absolutely.
And by the way, they don't even have to look at the book. Their memories were so sharp, they would exactly know that what the credit debit is operating. It's kind of the first blockchain.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a public ledger of whom I issue how much and so on.
Yeah, so what this person owes me and what I owe to that person, and ultimately how the settlement happens. Sometimes you don't even settle to the person from whom you owed. You give money to somebody that he owes money to, and that's how the settlement happens.
Hawala.
And by the way, even 100 years back, before or not even 100 years back, like 60, 70 years back, if you look at the history of stock exchanges, all the settlements in the stock exchanges used to also happen in the town square, where people will meet and they will have a ledger system which is saying, I gave my shares to you and you gave me the shares. So I think blockchain definitely, and crypto to some extent, has a legitimate use case. It will come up. I think what will happen is that where there is a boom, there is always a lot of hype, and then there is always a lot of bad actors, because every boom market attracts a lot of bad guys, because bad guys sees boom and say, oh, I will jump on it. So the FTX and all that stuff has been a huge setback to it. But I would love to hear, like, I think India has some legitimate use cases for crypto, mainly from enabling this, bottom of the pyramid. Do you see something like that in terms of a use case?
Well, so I'm trying to work on a credit system which will leverage this technology and public chain concept. But at the same point in time, I want to tell you the crypto inherently, even before the solution came, the currency that will be used in the solution got traded, and then got traded to get leverage to everything else. It was too early and too short-sighted enough to become successful or not. So India will have blockchain-led solutions, but may not have the coins that are not issued by sovereign.
Correct.
That's an important statement. So, Carl, another question would be that, let's say the Quad countries, which you chair the investment and forum between them, do you think there is an opportunity like a Quad country, G20 country, or the one-on-one bilateral committees, that there is something that in crypto ecosystem could be built between those countries?
Yeah, so well, I mean, some of
because cross-border is something which is problem for all of us.
Yeah, so I mean, there is some countries that are currently piloting their digital currencies, as you know, in Singapore.
CBDC, India.
Yeah, CBDC, right.
India.
Exactly.
India is right now doing
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there is a huge opportunity for CBDC to come in. Particularly, I mean, there are legitimate use cases. One is the elimination of fake notes. A lot of countries in the developing world have a huge issue of fake currency being printed. And that's why we absolutely need digital currency, number one. Number two, obviously, the efficiency of the transaction, where, Paytm has done an amazing job, but still there is a lot of cash-based transaction. If you have the digital currency, you can speed up that cash-based transaction. You can bring down the cost of the transaction. You can bring up the speed of the transaction. And then the third thing is that from an international settlement standpoint, I think the big problem that we have in the international trade is the settlement between two countries in the balance of payment in different currencies.
Yeah.
So if two countries adopt, just not one country, like if Singapore and India both have their central bank digital currency, it's called CBDC, then they can do settlement almost in real time. Today, the settlement between the Reserve Bank of India and the Central Bank of Singapore, whatever it's
MAS.
called, right? It happens on a longer duration, and there are a lot of hurdles in there because the currency market has moved up or down, because the US dollar has moved up, and so Singapore currency has appreciated, Indian currency has depreciated in matter of hours. So I think there is a huge use case for that. Now, once the government starts issuing this CBDC, then what would happen is that some segments of the industry, particularly like, let's say, real estate, like, let's just take one category. Real estate is huge. Real estate could use a transaction like that. We currently use this old 70-year, 100-year-old technology in real estate, escrow. Every time you're buying or selling a house, and it's why? Because I can't trust the seller to give my money, because I have no idea that the seller will give me the home.
Yeah.
Right? And so you go through this huge paperwork and this 50-year-old technology called escrow. But if you have a digital currency, you don't need to do that, because it's automatically an escrow. The seller is not gonna get my money until the house is delivered to me. So now you cut down that middleman right there. Again, you brought down the cost of transaction. So, yeah.
You can bring lots of benefits, including cross-border, but there are two challenges or the questions that are very vocally asked about CBDCs.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a question answer. I may have answer, but it does not mean I don't believe these questions. But these questions I want Carl's answer. One question is said that government is, by virtue of digitizing, becoming a watchful state.
Yeah.
Because it's a digital currency, the government will even know the money is moving between these parties and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I don't trust digital currency. Or I don't want to trust the digitization.
Well, but the government already knows that. Without digital currency, the government knows how much money you have in various banks. Banks are regulated, they know you.
So that's why they take the cash, and cash economy still thrives in the country.
I mean, how much money are you going to keep under your pillow or under your mattress? It's like, your money's sitting in the bank. The banks have to provide all kinds of reporting, data, audit, everything to the central bank, so they know.
Oh, so you're saying that CBDC does not increase the risk or opportunity of privacy or creates a privacy?
Absolutely.
Your point is that. If you are okay with banking system, you should be okay with CBDC system.
Exactly.
All right. Next question would be that if you notice the fiat currency world is where the banks exist to open a bank account and deposits. But in CBDC, the ultimate bank is a central bank.
Absolutely.
So the bank account is open with, earlier you would open a bank account with ICICI, HDFC or SBI Bank. Now you'll open a bank account with RBI Bank.
Absolutely.
So the Now that means the banking system will have a risk of even disintermediating
Huge
by none
disruption.
other than regulator.
Absolutely.
What do you think will happen?
Yeah, so I mean, that's exactly what the chairmen and the CEOs of the big banks are discussing with the regulator, because what will be the role? A lot of these things, you would have no middlemen, because banks are basically a middleman between your central bank and the consumer. So, I mean, all the implications, and there will be some guardrails and all that they'll figure it out. But yeah, I mean, the central bank will have a lot more pulse on the economy. They would know exactly what's happening, and they can make real-time decisions on interest rates and all of that.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's actually going to be good for the economy that the more data that the central bank has access to in real time, the better they can be responsive. Because otherwise we all blame the government and we say, hey, government is slow, government is bureaucratic, government doesn't get it, government is not data driven. But when the government is trying to become data driven, trying to be responsive, then we have our own issues about privacy. And we say, well, the big brother is watching.
Yeah, that very well put.
You want to have the cake and eat it too. I know we're running out of time, like we got 5-7 minutes, but there's a lot of great people in the audience. So let's take the questions. Maybe we'll take this gentleman, then we take Sanjeev.
Yeah.
Yes, no, just what you said about the CBDC, which have a potential. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Totally agree with what you said. CBDC has potential to totally destroy the banking system from above. And I was advocating that 10 years ago to some central banks. And what they told me, in various developing countries, they told me it's a fantastic idea. We see the interest in improving the velocity of money and the access to credit, etc., for the people, and also collecting tax, by the way.
Yeah.
But we, as a central bank, we don't want this burden of taking over all the decisions of credit, all the retail decisions of all the merchants.
Yeah.
So we need a healthy banking system,
We need a
not
distribution
us.
channel. So the banks are the distribution channel. Yeah,
Correct.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. Sorry, Sanjeev, go ahead.
So my question is, I'm from Silicon Valley, and I lived in India for almost 20 years before I left in '96. So we have seen evolution. If we go back in time, the currency is perfected in almost, 2+ years? And crypto is around for like maybe 20 years, maybe longer. Banking system is around for almost 300 years.
Yeah.
But let's talk about banking system for a sec. What is really a banking system? You even said it's a middleman.
Yeah.
Technology can be the middleman.
Yeah.
So how far are we from completely unbanking or disrupting the whole banking system? Because, and I will add one more point to that, which is very interesting, because I'm on the board of Penn IIT and I'm president of IIT Delhi Excellence Foundation. So I talk to a lot of directors, newer IITs, and they ask me, why these all Agrawal, my Guptas are running these damn unicorn, and my guys don't want to start, they want to work with them.
I'm a Sharma.
So you're an outlier. And I gave him a rationale, actually, and which...
Thanks, they're not bringing metas in that. That's good.
Yeah, I know. But these are not my words, so these are his words. So point I will say it is in the community, and one of my friend actually did a PhD on it. And his thesis is, you can get money from the family and friends without any collateral.
Right.
It helps you start the business. And the social pressure is so high, there is no way you can default. Yeah. That's the back. So, of course, that's not going to work in a banking system. I'm not talking about
But
that.
it can be replicated with technology.
That's my question.
The trust factor that bank brings in as a middleman, that can be replicated with the technology. Of course, the debit credit ledger system we have with the technology.
Actually, in my opinion, such credit systems exist.
Yeah.
If you notice, the credit from the stock exchange, bond system, etc., are not led by bank, like which takes the deposit. So the credit itself is a solution that has many solutions. It does P2P lending exists and so on and so forth. So in my opinion, the banking system's existence is a different question versus the credit solution. Because banking system actually does even more important than a credit job, which is called unlimited word called liabilities. The liability side, the balance sheet where the deposits come.
Yeah.
Providing a protected space, safe space for deposits is the duty of state or the regulated bank is even bigger than extending the credit. And that is why the central banks mostly stop credit or resist credit or resist extension of credit or resist all the kind of credits. So if you want to solve for credit, you said it. if you want to solve for banking system, I'm sorry, we don't have even exchanges holding the money correctly. You know what I'm saying? The trust.
Well, that's where we need Carl and you to figure it out, because there is an opportunity, I believe, for
But
the
it's
next
already
unicorn.
happening. So let me say this, right? So we've heard this quote before that the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. So think about Gen Z, right? Like my daughter is Gen Z. These folks, they probably don't use any bank. So because bank is basically saving and lending, right? Borrowing. You go to a bank, either you want to put your money or you want to borrow money. These folks, Gen Z, when they're going into the workforce, they're opening their account with Robinhood, not with a bank. So they deposit their money into Robinhood, which is, of course, they have a bank license because of depository, but they're not a bank. They started, right? They use the Robinhood account with the issued credit card to pay for their bills. They save, they put the money into the stock market for whatever is balanced.
So, Carl, I agree with that. The
So
question
they
is
don't
very
need
simple.
they don't need a bank. Yeah.
My question is very simple. I always talk about startups.
Yes.
So let's talk about opportunities.
Yeah.
I believe there are tremendous opportunities to create a Uber-like system,
Yeah.
which can completely disrupt, or Paytm-like system, completely disrupt the banking.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about unbanked, these unbanked are accessible to somebody.
Yeah, so-
instead of creating and bringing them to a bank and giving them an account, can
Yeah.
we do something else?
Absolutely.
I used to belong to this club. Now I'm a bank. So you will see my answer as a banker. Now, absolutely.
I don't think you're a traditional bank. I think
just-
the word bank needs qualification.
That's a word. That's a word.
What is the real definition of bank? Because the definition changes, right? Right.
The bank.
Okay,
The bank. which was-
Asha has a question, so let's get that.
My question simply is that, Vijay, what are you doing? You know where the opportunities are. You know what is in the. Are you doing something to spin off some startups, and really just trust some entrepreneurs, seed invest in them, and let them run with it? Just make sure that we are nailing this
100%.
as part of,
100%. Ma'am, this is exactly what my personal commitment to the startup ecosystem or India is. All my money, wherever. In fact, I used to invest when I used to not have secondary done, but salary done. So, I mean, yes, what else? So this question of that Agrawal family offers credit, this problem got solved in this country in last 10 years. I remember in 2008, I was in a Tycon, and the question that I asked in the room was, how many of you, for your next generation, who's got 3 job options, DE Shaw, Infosys, and 197 communication, will let that person know that 197 communication is a good choice. Because you do not let that make, we actually work on the food chains, last value chain of food chain as a talent, while we need the front food chain, and this country will change when we get the first talent. I can assure you of this today, ma'am, and I can assure you, sir, today, that this country, our country, now not only has the first right of refusal on the talent, as startups and technology companies, we also have access to dramatically large amount of capital in the risk space, obviously funded by domestic and international people, different time. And that brings me to the single question that you have.
Yeah.
You see the quad capital. Yeah. What will it take for India to attract about 100 billion incremental more risk capital?
I mean, all the underpinnings are already there. I mean, India has, great talent, large market, the growth's happening, the technology, innovation, the government is very pro-business. You see here, we're sitting here in India Lounge. Someone was telling me yesterday that I feel like I'm not at the World Economic Forum. I'm at a India Business Forum where some foreigners are attending. Okay, so I think we are already on the path for that investment. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and we have to thank Vijay for his time and his insights.
Thank you. Thank
we got
you.
to run to another.
You guys be nice.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yep. Thanks, Vijay.
Thank you.
Take care.
We'll take our selfie.
Yes, absolutely.
Vijay, we need a selfie.